guys. Welcome to the Copychat Show. My name is Todd Jones. I'm the founder of Copyflight, and on this show we talk about content marketing, copywriting, those kind of things that are involved in the digital marketing space. And today I have a veteran digital creator in Jason Resnick, affectionately known as Rez to most of us, on the show, and we're going to talk about one of the things he's very passionate about, very good at, and that's podcasting. So, Rez, if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us your elevator pitch.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. I appreciate it. This could be fun. Yeah, my elevator pitch is really this. I help online businesses essentially get more customers, get repeat customers, and create raving fans through behavioral marketing, segmentation, and automation. That's what I do for my client services. That's what I love doing. That's built around Nurture Kit. And then a real passion of mine is helping designers and developers create predictable systems for bringing in clients and leads, and then building out processes inside of their business. So that's a little bit what you find on res.com. That's with 3 Z's. And yeah, my wife always says, like, she knows what kind of day it is because my business is split like that, just by how I walk out for dinner. And for me, it's just, both of them I love doing. One pulls my hair out a little bit more than the other, but I love it.
You have a, I guess for lack of a better thing, like a membership community that you have. Live in the Feast, is that what it's called?
Feast Club. Live in the Feast is my podcast. Yeah, Feast Club.
And I've noticed it's very reasonable price. So, and who are the type of people you help in that particular? Is that the designers, creators kind of thing?
Yeah. For $5 a month, it's basically a community that's built on the phrase "a rising tide raises all boats." I have courses that are high-end courses, but there's always things to learn from everybody, and we work through every day. We run into problems, client situations, a resource that we might build out for ourselves, like just a simple template that we're going to send out as an email or something like that we're going to reuse. And Feast Club is really just for that. So it's allowing people to connect. There's a membership feed, if you will, where I will post things like that. Like I have a template, just recently this week, I have a template for building out sales pages. Right. And so I just shared that inside the community.
I need that.
and so, then we have a Slack community, which is also a part of that everybody just kind of connects and be able to have dialogue between each other. People need resources, designers need developers, and vice versa. And, marketers are in there and writers and such. And so, it's a great community. The reason why for me, it's $5 a month, really just to pay for the platform, right, that it's built on. But I wanted to make it accessible for just about anybody, because, especially in the time that we're recording this, there's no events, there's no masterminds, there's no retreats that anybody's going to, at least in the near future. So I would just wanted to make it accessible for as many people as possible, and just kind of put it out there and at least have it pay for itself, if you will.
Yeah, it sounds like as much of a networking thing as any. I mean, obviously you're learning and helping each other, but I mean, how many people are in that?
I've only had it up now since March 30th. And we just passed 55, I believe, was in there. So, I mean, it's growing every day. There's a lot of people in there. It's just leaving comments on threads and communicating in chat. Somebody just posted a job that they run an agency, and they're looking to hire somebody. So they posted it in Slack, and a couple of people already pinged up. And, so for me, like that's what it's about. Like you said, networking and just really
you're
just
building a good community. And we tend to do social media for our networking, which is what we have, and we're fortunate to have that. But at the same time, social media, especially when you talk about Facebook and Twitter and others, are so vast. There's so much noise, and so being able to focus in a group that's much small. I felt that way with Brendan's course as well, because we would go
Right.
in the Slack and we kind of chat about things. And so those smaller groups like that are sometimes more valuable than being on a Facebook group or whatever. So now I have
Yeah.
some Facebook groups I really like, but vast majority of them are not as good. I think Kim Doyle's got one of the best ones that I'm in online, and
Mhm.
Devender's got a really good one as well. So, okay. If you don't mind, let's move on to the lightning round, the getting to
Sure.
know Jason Rez. Ready?
Yep. Let's do it.
Cake, pie, or cookies?
Um, I guess I would say cookies.
Okay. Favorite TV show ever?
So you had a former guest say the same thing, but I would probably say Seinfeld.
Who said that one?
I think that was Josh.
Was it? Okay. I was wondering. Okay. Favorite holiday?
I have to say Christmas, especially now with two little ones. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. Just seeing Christmas through their eyes is like, I don't know. It's like a whole new world for me. So I would have to say that.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. Favorite author?
I hate to say it, but I'm not much of a reader. But if I had to pick an author, I would probably say Michael Crichton.
Okay. He's the guy that wrote the books about that they turned into a movie.
Yeah,
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic
Yeah.
Park. Yep. Mhm.
What is your favorite, or what is your go-to karaoke song?
Well, I'm a drummer, so not really the lead singer, and I try to stay away from karaoke. But if I had to, it would probably be one of the Metallica songs off the Black Album.
Okay. You like the heavy metal, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. I watched the movie about the Runaways over the weekend. Very interesting movie.
Mm-hmm.
The all-female
Mm-hmm.
rock band from the 70s. Anyway, so,
Yep.
if you could live anywhere, where would it be?
As long as I could bring family and friends with me, it would be Hawaii.
Okay. The pictures always look really nice, so
Yeah,
we'll
we
say
went
that.
there. We went there on a honeymoon, and we're not going to get back there anytime soon. But I'd love to go back.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. What influencer would you like to meet for a cup of coffee?
So, I don't know if he's well, I guess he is. George Carlin. I know he's passed, but
The comedian?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would love to just have 10 or 15 minutes with him just to chat. Like, I would love to see what that experience would be.
That would be a heck of a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Any comedian like that, especially old school comedian,
Mm-hmm.
that would be like or Seinfeld or Eddie Murphy or something like that.
Right.
Favorite subject in school?
Science.
Science.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a personal motto?
Personal motto. The only thing that I really have is be consistent. That's that. I don't know if it's a motto per se, but like I tell my kids, just be consistent. I want to be consistent in everything that I do. I had a high school baseball coach that always said that, just be consistent.
Yeah, and they always said that Belichick his thing to the team with the Patriots was do your job, and I think that's kind of resonates in there. It's not just do your job, be consistent, on each play, and that's kind of what he went for. I can see that. Yeah. Do you have any famous distant relatives or friends?
No, although over the years there have been Resnicks that have entered my space. As some politician now that's in the agricultural area that I get a lot of bad cold emails coming through. That is also Jason Resnick. Over the years, I've had Jason Mesnick, which was a bachelor at I guess maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I have no idea. I don't watch the show.
Okay.
Yeah, from the show, but there was a lot of cold bad emails there too. So
okay. People sending to you thinking you were him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, there are some famous Todd Jones out there. One of them was a pitcher for the
Hmm.
Detroit Lions for
He was
years.
good. Yeah.
And then I think I'm not sure. There's a lawyer. I think he has the Todd E. Jones or the ToddJones.com domain or whatever. Um, so I haven't really experienced that. People thinking I'm somebody else in that regard. Now
But
I've
with your
had
last name, there's tons of Joneses,
there are
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the, Yeah, but I don't get really mistaken for it. Now I like to liken myself to James Earl Jones, because my middle name is also Earl. Now I'm not
Hmm.
James Earl Jones, but I am Todd Earl Jones.
Hmm.
So, but he looks better and has a better voice than I do. But and he's also probably more influential and a whole lot of other things. But I do like James Earl Jones. He's a good dude. So
Hmm.
that would be a fun conversation to have with him. Somebody like
Very
that.
true. Yeah.
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 Anyway, so yeah, relatives are friends. Now I have met a couple Hall of Famers, um, sports Hall of Famers, maybe three, but at least two that I can think of. And we had a very famous. Are you familiar with NASCAR?
Not
The
really.
stock car?
Yeah.
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 Well, one of the best guys in the last 20 years is from my hometown. So
Hmm.
just little things here and there. Of course, obviously, I'm from Arkansas. That's the home of Bill Clinton. And
Hmm.
I used to say, if you lived in Arkansas when he was governor, you met him because
Hmm.
Arkansas wasn't very big, and he did go around to everybody. So
Hmm.
anyway, yeah, so it's kind of an interesting deal. So let's talk about podcasting. So when and how did you get started doing podcasting?
When it was probably around 2000, late 2013, maybe early 2014. Um, I it was really by accident, sort of. I always listen to podcasts. Even when you had to download the files and put them on your iPod at the time. So that was always interesting to me. And just having a conversation with somebody like we're having right now, I'd much rather do that than write a blog post or, whatever. So in 2014, I was just entering into, well, I was trying to make my name known in the WordPress space, specifically around WooCommerce. And so there was this other developer. He's in Australia. I'm in New York. And he had posted out that anybody, he wanted to start up a podcast. So I reached out to him and said, hey, I'd love to start a podcast too. We could be co-hosts. We're on other side of the planet. I'm not sure how all that's going to logistically work out, but we'll figure it out. So we created WP Dev Table, which we called it a loosely scheduled roundtable of geeks talking about WordPress. And we would bring on other people. We later brought on Tom Harrigan as another co-host. And we would bring on other developers, business owners, designers in the WordPress space and just geek out on Google Hangouts once a month. And it was very, like we didn't have a regular schedule. We didn't have any sort of process. I think it was like 7 or 8 episodes in. We were like, hey, maybe we should put a site together, So like there was nothing like formal about it and there was no real strategic. Both of us really just wanted to learn more about WordPress and the people that were in it. And then we started to see like traction. Like in other words, people would recognize us from the podcast and like going to word camps and things like that. And it was like, I'll still never forget it. The first time somebody caught me walking out of a bathroom and they said, hey, are you Jason from WP Dev Table? I was like, whoa, like I'm an introvert. So like it caught me totally off guard. But it was cool. It was cool to see. And for me, that was like, hey, this is a pretty cool thing because from that, I started to see the leads and how it affected my business in a positive way that I had no idea before. And I just thought at that point in time, hey, maybe this is a marketing channel that I could use um, rather than blogging, right? Or, social media or any of that. I mean, all of those things come into play here, but, for me, the choice was podcast as my medium. And so,
Right.
2014. Now it's 2020. That podcast is like archived or whatever. You'll probably still find it. But yeah, I've Live in the Feast, which is we're on our 8th season now. I did Ask Rez, which was a daily podcast for a full year, where I just basically answered a question every single day. And, guests on shows like yourselves, like just love just doing podcasts. And I have one actually that's currently being recorded that, I haven't released just yet.
Another podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be a third one.
Yep.
Okay. So you started the WP Dev in 2013, but when did you transition into live in the feast? Is that what you call it? Yeah.
Yeah. Live in the Feast. So that started about 2017.
Okay. So now I've looked at that, and you have seasons and their themes. I really think that's cool. I guess the big picture, that I'm kind of a big picture person, so that really resonated with me. I say, okay, this particular year is all about this, getting customers or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I really think that's cool, but I'm guessing each season is not really a year long. It's probably.
Each season ranges between 10 and 12 episodes.
Okay.
And each of those episodes comes out weekly. And then I usually take about a month in between each season.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal of each season is really, to your point, like if you're struggling on pricing, we have a whole season on pricing, right? And so you could go, it's like a course that's a podcast. You could go binge watch or binge listen to every episode, and every episode has a deep dive on a specific topic or strategy or story. So you getting clients, pricing, marketing, selling, right? Because it's pricing and selling is different. So, right now we're doing building your business. So it's kind of more on the journey of somebody putting together their business and seeing all the turns that they've made in the business, to kind of just, especially with this season, for me, I think that it's, this wasn't planned this way, obviously, but, I had started planning the season out because it has to have a full story, and, really, that each guest kind of has to fit the episode that I'm trying to get, out there. So when I was planning this back around December time, we didn't have a pandemic, right? Like we weren't on lockdown and all the rest of it. But now the building your business and hearing people's stories is like, there's twists and turns in everybody's business. And this is how somebody handled that twist and turns. And so now I'm getting audience members coming back and saying, hey, that was great because I didn't know, I could just shift like that. Or, this is a great little insight into how he ran the business or she approached this scenario or whatever. Right. And so I love hearing that feedback, but it also allows me then to know kind of what type of episodes people are resonating with. Right. So, I just try to, and again, I don't know how long this podcast goes. Cause I think podcasts have a lifespan, right? And I feel like, it's not always something that you have to continue doing in perpetuity. If it ends, it ends. Right. So, once I feel like the Ask Rez show, like I did that as an experiment. Like I do these social experiments, social media, social platforms, all this kind of thing. And I was just like, look, I'm getting tons of questions from developers and designers all the time, rather than me going from Twitter and grabbing an email and copying and pasting that into a DM somewhere else. Maybe I just make a podcast and I can just share a link to it. Right. And so I did that on Anchor. We were talking before the show about Anchor, and I did that for, I guess it was like 30 days. And then somebody had said to me, hey, you got Anchor to sponsor your podcasts? And I was like, no, I don't think so. And he goes, oh, well, your book, like, it sounds like it. So I listened back to one of my podcasts and they like kind of bookended it, right? So like front and tail, Like I was like, oh yeah, that's not cool. I don't really
Oh,
want to look at it like that. And hey, it's their business model. It's free or whatever. And so I, totally cool with it. But then I was just like, I was getting traction after the 30 days. And it was just a 30-day window that I gave myself. And I was like, look, I'm seeing subscribership going up. I'm hearing great positive feedback, and I'm still getting questions. So as long as the questions keep coming in and I can still answer them and it's not repeating on itself, then let me just keep going for however long this goes for. And so it got towards the end of a year. It was like 10 months into it, where I was like, okay, I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit more. And so I was like, I'm just going to go the full year. And, it was like 261 episodes.
yeah.
And we'll just take it from there. I'll close it up there, but it serves a purpose, right? Like the podcast, like anything, like it's a marketing tool that you can have and allow it to run its course. You figure out what adjustments you need to make, figure out, like I use my podcasts like blog posts, right? Like that's where the copywriting is. That's where the calls to actions are. Sharing what the guests are doing, things like that. And, going on podcasts in and of itself affects the domain rank of your own website too, from a technical perspective. I did an experiment where I tried to get onto 100 podcasts last year. I wound up getting on 67 or something like that. And, I saw my website just go up in the rankings. I didn't do anything SEO wise, and I'm not an SEO expert by any stretch of the imagination, but just by all of the backlinks of appearing on other people's podcasts, it made a difference. So,
yeah, I think podcasts could be, guest posting has mixed results. It depends on, like if I guest posted on copy bloggers, that's going to be a lot better than, a site that doesn't have much visibility. If I guest post on, one of the high profile sites, that will definitely boost your ranking and visibility. But,
mm-hmm.
but people seem to get, what I have heard from people is they've gotten more from being on podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and that depends on how that's executed as well. I mean, you come on and they ask you the right questions and you get to open your mouth and sound like somebody that, knows what you're doing, then it can, and they have a good audience. I mean, it always goes back to audience, but, just like when Josh came on, I said, I don't have, it's very early and there's really no benefit for you being on. He said, that's okay. I believe in doing good things for people and it'll
Mm-hmm.
come back. And so, I was pleased. And then Amon is just getting started in her podcast guest journey, and she was willing to come on. She was looking for somewhere. And so, I was pretty pleased that people of that caliber were willing to come on in the first 10 episodes. I mean, really, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's not going to be the best of time unless, I don't do any more after 10 or 12 episodes, but, so I was pleased with that. But I think you open yourself up to other audiences and, so I've been on a few. I haven't been on, I don't think I was on any last year. Well, yeah, actually I was, but, it's just, I think eventually it pays off. It's kind of like the compounding effect of content, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
when you started out and you did the themes per season, which I really like. I told you, was that something you thought of ahead of time? You thought, I'm going to do it this way, or did it just work out that way?
No, I wanted to do it that way, because I didn't want to have folks come on that tell the same story that they've told on 20 other podcasts.
Right.
But I also wanted to dive deeper into problems that the audience members, people that listen to the show have, right? And so, I basically anything that I put out now, Live in the Feast is tailored towards those freelancers, the developers and designers, right?
Right.
And so any content that I put out there for those people is really coming from me and what I wish I had known when I first started, right? And so I always look at it from that perspective, is like I'm trying to just pave the bumps in the road that I already encountered for somebody else. And so when I thought about it, I was like, okay, I could just churn out a weekly podcast just like everybody else and invite folks on and this, that. But then, you know, if somebody does like, and I get a lot of cold emails all the time about like people on book tours and, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And it's not relative to the audience at all. Right. And so like, you know, I got a real estate developer from Dallas, Texas one time cold. I'm like, have you even looked at the website like or
Yeah.
podcast?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't even make sense. But I wanted it in such a way where like, hey, how can I address a problem from multiple different angles that people are searching on? Because the thing is like how to get clients, right? So, you know, I get clients different than you get clients, and what works for me may not work for you. So how can I find out the different thoughts and the different experiments and different strategies that other people have had and bring them on to 10 or 12 episodes and talk about that? And so that's kind of where that, you know, genesis of that idea came from. And it's hard because I have to plan it out much more so than, you know, like that's what that month break in between the seasons are, is essentially me booking guests, reaching out to them, getting the availability, booking them, recording, and so on and so forth. So but I love doing it because it's just like every time a season's over, it's like, okay, well, what's the topic for next season? You know?
Yeah. In something like that, where nobody's handing you money to do it, you have to really like it. You have to
Mm-hmm.
really, you know, because if you don't, you'll burn out and you'll stop,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And yeah, I know everything has a season of life, and you know, you may get through 10 seasons and go, you know what, I don't need to do this anymore. Whatever, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I see you, it's almost like you're doing training for free,
Mm-hmm.
which, you know, that's what content is. So let me ask you, let's do a little transition here. What has podcasting for you? I mean, we've talked about the whole. I'm talking about things that I wish I would have known, trying to help others out, so forth. But and we talked about how you get clients, and you have a whole season on that. Um, what has podcasting meant for your business in terms of getting clients and other types of benefits you would get from that?
So what's funny is I know that 85% of the developers and designers that actually either buy coaching from me or come into the community or something like that came through a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's my own or, you know, guesting on somebody else's. I know that for a fact. However, when I first did WP Dev Table back in the day, I became known as the WooCommerce guy. And that was from that show. And having the guests come on the show there, they then knew that I was a WooCommerce specialist. And they were like, hey, he specializes in WooCommerce as well as subscriptions from Prosperous, that plugin. So anytime they had a project or they would get a lead that they just didn't either want or they couldn't book or whatever, that was a referable moment where they could say, hey, Jason knows WooCommerce. He can help you out. And that has just trickled down through all of podcasts, right? So Live in the Feast, I bring on folks that, you know, they have an expertise that I don't have. And, you know, case in point, right? So I had Val Geisler come on the show. She's, you know, an amazing copywriter specifically for onboarding emails and things of that nature.
Very smart. It's very smart.
She came on the show, and then one of her connections, Aaron Orendorf, was looking for an email automation expert. So she connected me to him, and he became a great client, and so on and so forth. We're still working together. So, you know, just having that wider connection or that wider network from just having a conversation with somebody for a half hour or an hour, you know, proves that word of mouth strategy even further. And I've built my whole business around word of mouth marketing specifically. right? And so I talk a ton about that, but it's, and I could go down the rabbit hole of there, but basically, everybody, probably most of your listeners here, 90% of them are referrals. They get clients by referrals, but it's always by chance. Well, I've built a decade-long business not by chance, right? And so for me, there's an actual marketing strategy behind word of mouth that Jay Bear has talked about, and Talk Triggers and so many other people that have talked about it. If you actually put some thought and effort into building relationships with people, the word of mouth then becomes predictable. So that's, for me, that's how podcasting has grown my business. If there was no podcast, to be honest with you, I'd probably be sitting in a cube somewhere.
Yeah. That's that. I kind of wondered about that. I know that, the vendor has said from when he started his podcast, he started having people to contact him for different stuff,
Mm-hmm.
coaching or beaver builder help or whatever. It just makes you more visible. And I think sometimes people think that, until they really have something to say, they don't need to. And I can relate to that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you ain't been in business, hadn't done this for a long time or whatever. And you're like, why am I getting on and talking? But, and I've seen other creators do a podcast, and it's more or less for their own audience, as opposed to getting, people from wherever to come. Um, I'll go to a copywriter site and then, oh, check out my podcast. I'm like, okay, I didn't know you had one.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with it. They may have like a 10-minute, kind of like Ask Rez, that
Mm-hmm.
podcast. I think that's great. I just tell people, look, don't go into it trying to be, the next Pat Flynn or whatever, go in just trying to meet your audience. I think answering questions about stuff is a fantastic way to get started with a podcast. And maybe I'll look into doing more of that in the next, 10, 15 podcasts after the initial 12. But that's really, really interesting. And it really does make you more visible. And then when did you decide to become a guest more?
I guess probably maybe around season 3 or 4 of Living the Feast, to be more purposeful, right? And so, like people would invite me onto the show, and I'd go, and I love doing podcasts, and there's
Right.
nothing wrong there. But when I started to, start to see that when you guest on other people's podcasts, one, they're listening, the audience is already listening to a podcast. So it's easy enough for them, for you as the guest, to promote your podcast, because they're like, oh, I didn't know you had a podcast. Let me go check it out. And if it resonates, then it's easy, right? The context switching is so difficult in podcasting because people are, well, in normal life, they're at the gym or they're in the car or something like that. So when you have a call to action that says, hey, go to my website and you can get my freebie, that's a hard switch to come from the earbuds to, okay, now what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? And like all that. But if you say, hey, listen to my podcast, Live in the Feast, like, oh, well, while they're running on the treadmill, they're already in the podcast app. So it's an easy transition there.
Yeah.
And to your point, look, don't go trying to be the Pat Flynn's, right? Or the John Lee Dumases out there, like, or Tim Ferriss or any of those other, podcast stars, if you will. But serve the audience, serve who you want to have a conversation with, highlight what they're doing well, come from that perspective of serving, and you'll see that come back to you in spades. Because what happens is you're networking. Like, we're saying we've talked through Twitter and Facebook and so on and so forth. We never met face to face until just now. And so this connection right here is so much stronger than a tweet. And like, now we've seen each other, we've talked, had a conversation, all right, now it's so much, the relationship is so much more deep at that point in time that, it's just, for me, the podcast, you'll think of me, I'll think of you when the time is right for, whatever work that may come our way, but also just to say, hey, look, like when we do meet up in real life at some event somewhere, again, sometime in 2025 or whatever it is, but, like it's cool, right? Like, it's like, oh, hey,
Yeah.
Todd, like, so for me, podcasting is that hallway chat
Mhm.
in conferences and events and meetups and things like that.
Yeah, I've actually been on it's a WordPress hallway chat. I don't know if
Hmm.
you know those guys
Yep.
that
Hmm.
do that. I've been on that show. It was a couple years ago, and that's essentially what they're trying to recreate. And I think, what I've heard of it is they've done a good job. I really like that they brought in people who maybe fly under the radar of, the top level WordPress people. I really like, I mean, they've had some of them on, they've had regular Joes and Janes on there as well. So
Hmm.
I really like they do that. Yeah. The podcasting and I've not listened to as many. Rob is a Rob Cairns calls himself a podcast addict, and I don't know, but I'm trying to listen to more. So, and if I find them on YouTube, then I can listen to them. I'm on YouTube a lot, so
Hmm.
watching videos and stuff, and then some of them are starting to bleed into go into Spotify,
Yep.
which I have open a lot as well. So. In fact, one of the newest podcasts I listen to is on Spotify, so that's helpful. So, anyway, so do you have advice? You just gave out one piece of advice, but do you have advice for any digital creator or anyone really listening that maybe wants to think about either being a guest on a podcast or doing their own podcast?
Yeah. Well, as a podcast host, I have tons of advice on how to try to be a guest. One is ask, right? Like ask the host, but come with some value, right? Like at least listen to maybe a couple of shows, see if it's something that you want to be a participant in,
Mhm.
and try to look at previous episodes and see where you could fill a gap, right? And so, like for me, I have these seasons, right? And so getting clients was several seasons ago, right?
Mhm.
And so times have changed, things have different, right? So now I'm thinking to myself, do I do like part two, right? And so
Mhm.
like those sort of things, right? And so if somebody came to me and said, hey, look, I know you've got a season full of getting clients and things like that, but one strategy that's really worked for me has been this, and you don't have anybody mentioning that, that brings valuable to me, but more importantly to my audience. And so that's the best way to get in the door for as a podcast host, as
Okay.
a guest rather, to the host. Now, to be a host, look, I hear a lot of times like, hey, you're an extrovert, you could get out there. And I'm like, wait a second, first of all, I'm not an extrovert. Right? It took me 3 days to get in the right mindset to be in my wedding. And those are all my friends and family. So like I
Yeah.
know those people, but it's just for me, and Janelle Allen said it best, was that introverts just get their energy from being by themselves,
Mhm.
not surrounded by people. And so I love that, right? I love podcasting. It's something I can be consistent with. It's something that I enjoy doing. And if you're thinking about doing a podcast, try to be a guest first.
Mhm.
See if you can get on some podcasts and see how you like it first. But then just bring up a microphone. You could even use your iPhone at this point in time. The mic is good enough there to start getting going, and be consistent. Blast through that episode 17. That seems to be the
17.
stopping point. Yeah, 17. That seems to be like the stopping point for most podcasts. But if you could blast through that consistently and you love doing it and you get to into some sort of rhythm, um, once you press record and you've recorded, all the hard work's done. Just publish it, get it out there. Don't say like, hey, I need music or I need this, that, and you don't need any of that stuff. Just get it out there, put it out there. Um, Somebody's going to find it. But look into your email and, like, to your point, what questions, what sort of conversations are you having in your email? Because those things will give you ideas on the types of podcasts and the episodes that you could talk about. right? And so that's how I've always approached podcasting is like, what are people asking me about? What am I having conversations about on social? You know, Ask Rez was just literally, it was like a 3 to 7 minute episode every day that I was just answering a question. Right? And so I was getting enough questions and all right, let me see. I'll just put a podcast together rather than writing out blog posts after blog post after blog posts.
You're creating content, you're creating consumable content, and you're giving expert advice. I think that's really what it comes down to right there. I mean, whether you're talking about pools, you had one person on your podcast talking about pools at one time. So, whether you're talking about pools or you're talking about WordPress or WooCommerce or copywriting or whatever you have some experience in, it's really about creating consumable content that answers questions, really. So it's a very good way to look at it. And I'm with you. I mean, when I started, I didn't have a intro for 8 episodes or whatever. I mean, it was like after I did a few, I'm like, I need to have an intro. So then that brings up a whole new set of complications. But and now I'm thinking, okay, now I need to do an outro, but I haven't got to that point yet. So,
yeah, I mean, listen, if you go and listen to season 1, well, probably through the first couple of episodes of season 3, that's all me and doing the editing. Right. Yeah. Like, and I was just like, this is not fun.
A lot,
like,
yeah.
I was just like, this is not me. And it actually became a point where I was like, all right, I'm just not going to do this because I don't want to do this part. But I love podcasting. So I found somebody to do it for me. Yeah. Adam Clark from Podcast Royale, right? This is what he lives and breathes. He worked for Apple for a while. He does podcasting, he knows his deal. If you listen to one of those episodes that I did versus that, yes, I pay for it. But, if you don't like doing the editing and the music and all the rest, like I'm not an audiophile, so I don't even know what levels are and all that stuff, right? And so for me, I was just like, if he knows that stuff, I press record, I upload it to Dropbox, and he deals with the rest of it. Yep. And so that for me is like gold. It's well worth the money that I spend on it. So, try to figure out what those hurdles are. I mean, that's the only that's the biggest expense that I have in my business, but it's the biggest impact to my business, right? That's the content.
But that's key, isn't it? If you're not getting a return for it, it's not really worth doing. But I will say this, until you get to that point, and I don't recommend somebody starting out hiring an Adam Clark to do that. But until you get to that point, you learn some skills you didn't know you could learn. I mean, I'm with you. I'm not very good at this stuff either, but I have learned to do some stuff that if you'd have told me a year ago I'd learn to do, I'd be like, nah, but wow, so I'll, maybe one day I will be turning all this over to somebody to make a better production, and that'd be fine. But it's been, I have no, it's just like, maybe you do a home project, you think I'll never do that again, but I'll learn something, It's the same kind of principle, and it's, you can never take away the skills that you learn, even if you never use them again, because you prove to yourself that you can learn something new, and you can always write a blog post about it. Hey, this is what I did. So, you can always do, or an email or whatever. So, well, man, it was a very good conversation about podcasting, and I haven't experienced it too much on this side of it, so this is new to me, and I thought we had some very good points on this. So I appreciate you coming on and giving your wisdom on that.
Thanks for having me.
It was a very good conversation before and during, and one I would love to have again sometime. So
absolutely,
hope we can do that again sometime. Appreciate you guys watching the Copychat Show. We're gonna put information about Jason in the show notes. He's given us some links and stuff, and I think you've got something for Copychat viewers. I'm not sure, but anyway, we'll put all that in the show notes, and just to keep on going and try not to give up. Talk to you guys later.